Okay. So here's a piece of context that I always like to ask students about. So here's an interesting thing about all of us, is pretty much from the time we were born, every person in this room was praised for being bright. Right? We just talked up a storm and we were interested in this and we were so clever. And we were encouraged most of the time to be clever. It seems like a good thing, and maybe it is because here we are, but imagine being born with twice the intellectual capacity of Leonardo. Smarter than any of us, no question. Twice the intellectual capacity of Leonardo, but in 10,000 BC. How far are you going to get? How far did Leonardo get? Leonardo could not invent a single engine for any of his vehicles. Think about that. Maybe the smartest person of his time, but he was born in the wrong time. His IQ could not transcend his time. So IQ is really not worth that much. Because talking about vehicles, here's Henry Ford, nowhere near Leonardo, but he happened to be born in the right century. A century in which people had already done a lot of work in making mechanical things, and so it was duck soup to make a car that worked and sell millions of them for $475 a piece. And of course, we have Daimler and Benz here in Germany. So basically, when you're born at the right time, a whole bunch of things are open to you. So knowledge, in many, many cases, just trumps IQ. And why? And this is because there are certain special people who invent new ways of looking at things. So Ford was powerful because Isaac Newton changed the way Europe thought about things. So he changed an entire way of things, and it's one of the wonderful things about the way knowledge works. If you can get a supreme genius to invent calculus, those of us with more normal IQs can learn it. So we're not shut out from what the genius does. We just can't invent calculus by ourselves. But once one of these guys turns things around, the knowledge of the era changes completely. So this is why, in the United States at least, computer science is almost dead. Because, and of course, I would get a lot of argument about that because there are many people there, but the outlook there has gotten pretty weak. And so the way I think of it is the outlook that you have on something is what is going to give you those extra IQ points. That if you have a really powerful outlook, the knowledge you'll gather will be powerful. And then if you have some extra brights, if you happen to be clever, when you have those first couple of things, then you can be very powerful. So I think of knowledge as silver and outlook as gold. And IQ is kind of a lead weight. And this is killing computer science because a lot of people in computing don't bother learning anything because it's not that difficult to learn how to program badly. Right? And you can be clever and write a program in JavaScript to do lots of different kinds of things. The problem is there's no place to go with it. So when I look at our field today from this 50-year perspective, well, looking back, I would say the absolute number of 4 and 5 sigma IQs has actually increased. So if we were to take all of the people in our field, vastly more, and look at the super bright, there's just more than there were 40, 50 years ago. But the relative number is much worse. because the total number has increased tremendously and the absolute number of the super bright has not increased commensurately. And so there's an enormous amount of noise from the middle today in the field. An enormous number of artifacts from them. Similarly, there's a lot more knowledge of computer science today than there was 40, 50 years ago. But the general knowledge of most of the practitioners has only increased a little bit. The small size of this increase is almost staggering, given what there is to know that has been written down in various places. And then the number of outlooks that are powerful has gone way up over those years, but the general outlook is hardly more powerful than it was. I'm talking about programming here. This is quite astounding. So something is going on that reminds me a lot of pop music. Right? If you sit down and learn music and look back over the last 6 centuries, man, it's just some of the most incredible. I'm not talking just about classical music, I'm talking about jazz, any kind of developed music. It is just amazing, the riches that are there. Yet pop music uses 1/100% of that. And so I think what's happened is computing has turned into a pop culture. And the universities are not helping in general, at least in the US.